So, if you're like a lot of the people that I work with, you may tell yourself that you should probably have your finances all handled by now. And then, the moment that you actually sit down to look at them, something in you just gets tight or nervous or avoidant. Or you feel exhausted. It's like, oh my God, that again. Or you go into this burst of, okay, I'm finally going to get organized, and then you do that for like 3 days, and then it just kind of disappears and it slacks off, and you're right at the same point again. And if you're honest, I'm guessing that part of you judges yourself for exactly that, right? You think that you should be better at this. You're too old for this. Maybe you should know more by now, or look at everybody else. They seem to be able to manage their finances well. But more often than not, this isn't about discipline at all. There's usually something deeper going on underneath it. And by the end of this clip, you'll understand why money carries so much emotional charge, what's actually driving a lot of those patterns, and how to approach financial clarity without disconnecting from yourself while you're doing that. Okay, that's what we're going to look at. Hi, I'm Leeza Steindorf. I'm an international leadership coach and facilitator. And for more than 20 years, I've worked with people around leadership and self-trust, emotional patterns, conflict communication, and what happens internally when pressure gets attached to our identity. And money is one of the places where this shows up most powerfully. So if this feels complicated, you're not alone. In fact, I'd actually say it's one of the most human experiences we have, especially in this Western modernized world. Okay? So if this feels useful to you, go ahead and subscribe, because these conversations build on each other and you'll know when new clips come out. So let's be honest. Money's almost never just about money, right? People may talk about it like it's numbers, but emotionally, it's much bigger than that. And you can just look in our culture at large, right? If somebody's a millionaire, it's like, ah, or if we hear that someone lost all their money, oh, right? There's this whole emotional swing that happens in all directions with money. It becomes safety, freedom, identity, choice. It also becomes stability or status, right? Or security, or possibility. And that's what I want to talk about also today, is it sometimes becomes shame. And that's why financial stress can feel so overwhelming. You're not only looking at numbers. You're often looking at what those numbers seem to mean about you. And that's the deeper layer. And most people were never taught how to work with that layer. We're taught about strategy and budgeting, if we're lucky, right? Budgeting, saving, investing, planning. And all those things matter. Of course they do. And we can learn them, right? If you don't have those pieces, you can also go out and learn those pieces. But what we're talking about here is what financial strategy doesn't teach you. It's the aspect of the emotional relationship that we have with money. So you may know what you should do, but internally, your system's reacting to fear, maybe, pressure, avoidance, comparison, scarcity or fear of scarcity, overwhelm, or that shame I was talking about. And you have all that going on while you're actually trying to deal with your finances. And that changes the whole experience. How could it not? Because if your nervous system associates money with pressure, then your relationship with money is going to become inconsistent, right? Because it's so charged then. You'll avoid, and then you'll overcorrect, and then maybe get nervous or tight and then rebel against doing it at all. And then, so then you avoid it again, right? And then you have this cycle. And you may interpret that cycle as irresponsible, or either in yourself or in other people. But actually what it is emotional overload. So that's why the first question that I would ask is, why does this feel so overwhelming? Not financially, internally. Because for many people, the moment that they look at money, it becomes personal. You may feel like you're behind. You may feel like you're unsafe without finances, or maybe unsafe with a lot of money. You may feel immature because you haven't developed that area yet, or restricted. Some people don't feel like they're ever successful enough or stable enough, no matter how much they have. Most people don't feel like they are where they should be. So now you're no longer simply dealing with finances. You're actually dealing with what you believe your finances say about you. And that's a very different conversation. And it's where a lot of emotional weight comes from, right? And especially for people that are very capable, competent people, professionals, right? Especially for people who function well in other areas of their lives. Because when someone's competent professionally, but they get emotionally flooded around money, then they often feel confused by themselves, right? And they think, well, why can't I just handle this? But self-judgment usually makes everything worse, but it makes this pattern worse. It doesn't make it better. By judging yourself as not being able to deal with it, just kind of increases that intensity. Because shame rarely creates clarity, right? It usually creates avoidance because it doesn't feel good. And that's important to understand, right? So I just want to make a note of this again. When we judge ourselves and we shame ourselves, we're actually not helping ourselves to deal with whatever it is in front of us, but we're actually making it more difficult because that becomes such an unpleasant experience that we just want to push it away and avoid it at all cost. And that happens often around money. So for many people sitting down with their finances, it doesn't feel like just opening a spreadsheet. It feels like stepping into that judgment, stepping into that shame. And those are very different experiences, right? So here's another distinction that becomes, in my opinion, incredibly important. What's the fact and what's the meaning we're giving it? And I'll give you some examples. A fact may be, you have numbers. The meaning, I'm failing. The fact, you have debt, you owe money. The meaning, I'm irresponsible. A fact may be, you're not where you hope you'd be according to your goals. The meaning that you give it, I've ruined my future. A fact, you don't fully understand something financially. A meaning you may give it is, I should already know this, right? So that meaning, those meanings, and there's layers of them, they're emotionally heavy. And once it becomes emotionally heavy, people stop looking clearly because it's an unpleasant experience. Or they swing over toward control. That's the pattern that a lot of people move between. It's either they avoid it, I'm just not going to go there, or now I'm going to get it right? I'm going to do it right. So if you ignore everything and then suddenly try to fix your entire financial life in like 48 hours, that's not going to work, right? And underneath that, or I'm just not going to go there at all, is fear, right? Either I can't do it because it's so big, or I'm going to get it right because I've messed it up. Either one is going to keep you in a cycle. It's not going to get you clear. So I'd like to offer a reframe that's going to help you change that. What if financial clarity didn't begin with trying to control everything, or didn't involve avoiding anything? What if it began simply with honesty? That's different. Control often comes from panic. Honesty comes from being grounded. So control might say, I need to force this into shape right now. And honesty will say, well, let me see what's here. Well, let me look at it without falling apart, without attacking yourself, without turning that reality into a meaning about yourself, and without attaching it to your identity. And that may sound simple, but it's harder than most people think. To simply look at something and say what is. To sit with reality without emotionally escalating. Because once we become emotionally escalated, once we're engaged in that cycle, it's very difficult to think clearly, right? Because we often go into this back brain protective stance or fear stance, and then we can't come forward into our frontal lobe where we have our cognitive abilities and say, oh, it's this number or it's that number, right? And that's what happens with our finances. So this doesn't mean ignoring responsibility. And it doesn't mean becoming passive. Oh, well, so what? I have, negative $300 on my bank account. Or, oh, so what? I owe $3,000 to whomever it is. It's not about pretending that those numbers don't matter. Not at all. Numbers matter. Reality matters, like we're here in a physical world, right? But when you shame yourself, you distort that reality. Those numbers take on a meaning that they actually don't have. They're only numbers. And that's the issue. Shame makes people avoid, or makes them panic, or to numb themselves, or maybe even overspend for relief to take off the pressure, or undercharge because they don't really believe in their value, or they overwork because internally that exhaustion or that intensity of work somehow equals worthiness for them. And most money patterns make sense once we understand what's driving them. So we can come to understand whatever pattern it is you have, right? If it's any of these or none of them. And that's why honesty matters more than attacking yourself. Because when you're honest and you can look at things without judgment and just say, it is so, and that's a practice, when you can see clearly, then you have choices. And that's the next shift we're going to talk about. What opens up for you when you drop shame? Yeah, you can actually see what's there, see what's in front of you, because it's not layered with all this emotional judgment. And once you can see clearly, you can actually work with that reality. And not from a place of panic, but from steadiness, from your ground. You can say, okay, here's where I actually am. May not be where you want it to be, may not be great, but you can just stand there for a minute. And without turning it into, I'm a failure or I've done it all wrong. Because when you can do it that cleanly, I'm going to say that changes everything. Because the moment you stop turning financial reality into an identity crisis or a statement about who you are, your nervous system calms. And then you are more available cognitively for problem solving. And this is patterning. You can change this. And that's where actual change begins, right? Not through punishing yourself, but through clarity, through seeing honestly what's in front of you. And that's important. Because some people think if they stop shaming themselves, they'll stop being responsible. They'll just, well, if I don't push myself and make myself wrong, I'm just going to go ahead and do whatever. It's my experience, and a lot of professionals that I work with and know have had different experiences. When people drop shame and judgment of themselves, they stand with their potential in a very different place to deal with what's right in front of them. So shame often interferes with responsibility because it makes people emotionally avoidant, because shame's no fun. So when it comes, it's like, whoa, not going to go there. And then everything attached to that shame, whether it's financial in this conversation or whatever it is, gets pushed aside. Because attached to that subject is the experience that nobody really wants to have. So clean responsibility is much calmer. And that's based on being honest with what is right in front of you. Okay? It's saying what's true right here. Or this is what's needed. Or this is the next step, with no drama and without falling apart, without turning ourselves into the problem. We are here dealing with something that needs to be dealt with. And that is grounded financial empowerment. It's not perfection. It's not performance. It's grounded relationship. How are you in relationship with your finances? So what do you actually do with this? We're going to get to that now, okay? First thing is, know your actual numbers. Don't be vague. Don't get emotional about it. And if that comes up, then feel that for a minute and then come back to the facts. All right. Be factual, actual. What comes in? What goes out? What are your fixed expenses? What's flexible? What do you need financially every month or every year, whatever your framework is? What's avoidable and what's sustainable? So that's your first step, is to look at reality as it is. And then it becomes a lot less frightening when you're specific about it. Okay? That's the first thing. Number 2 is notice the places where you want to pull away emotionally. And this matters because that's an indicator of your own patterning. When do you avoid? When do you get tight? When do you numb? Or when do you overspend and want to just escape? When do you suddenly stop looking at what's right in front of you? And the patterns are there. It's just that we often haven't put a spotlight on it to look at and say, oh, look at that pattern there. That's what I'm inviting you to do. So those moments when you get those insights contain information. Just information. Again, no judgment. but they point toward the emotional charge. Okay? Important things to notice. All right. Number 3, identify those repeating patterns. Not to shame yourself, but to understand yourself. Do I spend for relief? Do I avoid structure because it feels too restrictive, like don't want to deal with a budget? Do you maybe overgive, like do too much pro bono work or give away too much of your money? Do you undercharge? I see this a lot with entrepreneurs. Yeah, undercharging when their value is vastly higher. And do you attach your worth to your productivity? Like if I work harder, that means I'm doing better. It's a pattern. It's not a truth. And do you maybe swing between scarcity and impulsiveness? I have no money, I'm going to buy a brand new car, right? So whatever the patterns are, they become workable once you can see them. All right, that's number 3. And number 4 is build systems that are simple enough that you can maintain them. And this is really important. It's actually huge. Whatever the system is, whatever your financial tracking system is, your budgeting system, your savings, whatever it is, simplify it to a point that it works for you. Yeah? A lot of people build systems for the person either they think they should be or that somebody else has given them a system rather than building a system for who they really are. And with time, eventually those systems fall apart because they weren't built for you and for your life and how you live and how you function. So build systems for your actual life, for your energy levels, for your rhythm, for who you are, and not to punish yourself. It should be a workable system, how you manage your money. It's a support system. And when you create that and you engage with that financial system that's tailored to your needs and to your walk and to your goals, then your relationship with money changes. It really does. And that part really matters because over time, money really reflects our relationship with ourselves, which can also be expressed in our relationship with our money. Money doesn't express our worth. It expresses our relationship with our worth and with how important we are and how it is that we deal with the things that are important to us and how honestly we look at things, how consistent we are in our responses, in our application of the systems we have. It also tells us how much shame we carry and how much trust we build. That's the relationship we can have with ourselves. How connected we stay with the reality that's in front of us instead of performing how we think it should be. And that's the deeper work. And strangely enough, when people stop viewing money or treating money like it's their identity, they actually become a lot more financially capable because it's not been bogged down in this emotional quagmire. So they can begin to see themselves clearly and also their relationship with money, and then clarity of the facts and how I'm dealing with things and my patterning and what I'm changing. That changes our behavior with time. Just the clarity alone, right? So the anchor is this. Financial clarity begins the moment you stop turning numbers into a judgment about your worth. That's it in a nutshell, really. And money, our relationship with it just reflects patterns. It doesn't reflect your value as a human being. It's helpful to remember that, okay? So if this helped you, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, like the video or share it with someone you know who may be also tired of approaching money from that shame, pressure, or avoidance stance, okay? And next we'll look at how internal authority shapes every decision that you make. Thank you for being here. It's a pleasure to walk with you. Until soon, be well.